Mike Rudd, welcome to Noise11.com. We've got both the historical and the hysterical to get through, haven't we? Start with the historical. We've got the new live Ariel album. When I say new, historic concerts from 1976, but also 1997. So listening to this, Gil Matthews has put all this together, and the sound of it is absolutely incredible. What sort of quality were you working with originally from the original tapes for this? Because I could imagine that it would not sound on how he's got it sounding on here now.
The 2JJ recording is the first one up. So that was professionally done and very well done. I forgot the name of the engineer, but he was a lovely bloke and he knew what he was doing. And I think the one that's probably the most dicey is the one at the railway, the station hotel.
Yep,
and that was recorded, in mono and on a cassette player from the desk. So it was extremely dodgy, but they've done due diligence on that and brought it out. The other one at the Continental, again recorded. I don't know who did the recording, but they did a good job.
And 1997, so that one was 23 years down the track.
Yes, yeah. But when you're looking at recording, I mean, I listened to our recordings back in the very early 70s, late 60s, and the recording's fantastic, even with the limitations of tape. And it was, all the studios were set up for that in mind. So it was great quality, fantastic microphones, knowledgeable engineers. What else can you ask for?
Well, the ABC 2JJ back in the day was really pioneering the capturing of live recording of Australian artists. That had happened before with the ABC, GTK, for instance. They had a lot of historic content, but I don't think a lot of that exists now. But the 2JJ stuff then went on to be archived. So it's fantastic that something from the 16th of March 1976 I can listen to on 5 speakers around the room, and it's almost like being in the room.
Yeah, you get a real picture. It's very well recorded, and we were a very tight band. So all in all, it's a very rewarding experience. It's not tacky.
Let's talk about one of the guys on this record. If people can see here, Harvey James, who had a short innings, didn't he, with Ariel? And when he left you to go to Sherbet, and his first recording with Sherbet would have been the Howzat album.
And if you look at that photograph again, you can see I'm wearing a Sherbet T-shirt.
Oh, you are too. That's for the studio audience. If you see Mike's Sherbet T-shirt down there, yes. What was that? Because you knew he was going, or did Darryl say, "Hey, Mike, if I give you a T-shirt, will you give me a guitarist?"
No, that was well earlier than he made that decision. But no, it was prophetic in a prophetic kind of way.
Yeah, and therefore we arrive at the historic and the hysteric. There we go.
Yes.
We're finally
I suppose so. But Harvey did a great job with recording with Sherbet, so you can't deny him his moment of fame, and he deserved it. Even though it wasn't a long stint with Ariel, it was tough. It was really tough going. We did the recording at Abbey Road, which was tough because we had a very limited time. We were rushing and we had our heads down, and we didn't have material, so we had to kind of go back and do revised versions of songs that had keyboards attached and had been done by the band who was interpreting that material. It was at their peak, and we were nowhere near a peak, and we should have had some new material to work with, but we only had a couple of songs.
Yeah, 1970, I guess it would have been late 1975 when you would have been recording the album at Abbey Road.
Yes.
Who else was in the studio at that time?
And Bill Putt's story was going for a leak, and Elton John turns up next to him.
It
Wrong
must be
toilet,
an
mate.
incredible place to work.
Yeah, an incredible place to urinate.
Yes, they literally take the piss, don't they?
Yeah, that's true. They do.
A Strange Fantastic Dream was the
Yes.
first Ariel album released in December 1973,
Mm.
but the first Spectrum album, Part One,
Yes.
was only released on the 1st of March 1971. So we didn't even go 3 years between the first Spectrum and the first Ariel. It was a short amount of time. So when you talk about Harvey not being in the band for a long time, no one really was in either band for a long time.
No. No, look, I reckon 4 years of busting your head against a brick wall is enough. It was also complicated by the fact that the single "I'll Be Gone" was held up for 6 months. So we were sort of in the middle of recording, or even finished recording the album by the time the single came out. So yeah, it seems like a very short turnover, but that 6 months that was when the PPCA was formulated. Anyway, and there was a radio strike. So the major labels like EMI weren't allowed to present their stuff on radio, and that's where that all started.
Mm.
The label, for instance, that started at that particular time. So and there were, and it had the effect of allowing local artists to hit the hit parade for the first time. And 1973 was it was probably the big year for Australian artists on the top 40.
Well, that would have been the Fable label era, wouldn't it? With Liv Mason and
Yeah.
there were a whole lot of acts on that label. I think Brian Cadd's Bootleg Family came out
Yes.
of its own label spin-off of Fable as well. So it was a very annoying time for Australian radio, but a very productive time for Australian music.
Yeah, yeah, and politically it was the same thing. It was a moment where the Australian voice was taken notice of and given its due place on the charts, and then that disappeared again, as it does.
And here we are today. Hello, Aria. Hello, Aria.
Hello.
There was also the indelible Murtceps in between all of that was going on. So there was really Spectrum, Murtceps, and then into Ariel in a 3 or 4 year period for you. That must have felt like a roller coaster ride.
After the demise of of Spectrum and Murtceps, and the Terminal Buzz live album, which I think Gil's going to have a crack at next. There was a very short hiatus for between that demise and the start of Ariel, and so I basically wrote an album's worth of stuff at that particular moment, and yes, it was a hotbed. That was.
Just to put it into a timeline perspective, that would be like if Spectrum released their first album in the year 2020 and Ariel had broken up now, and throw Murtceps in between. So like just in that short amount of time, we think back to 2020 like it was just the start of COVID. It feels like yesterday. Pretty much was yesterday. But all of that happened in that time period.
And I think that actually that leads us into the current era where the bands have their own recording and writing schedules, and they're able to produce 1 or 2 albums or 3 or 4 albums a year, and that would have kept the creative juices going as well.
Yeah, the 2 concerts that we have on here from the 1970s, the 1975 live at the Station Hotel Paran and live at Studio 221 Darlinghurst in the 16th of March 1976, both start with the same song. The first 4 songs are the same on both. Did you have a very similar set list that you sort of stuck to at that time?
Well, probably did, yeah. Uh, and the lineup was almost identical, if not identical. So yeah, it's not totally surprising. And we hadn't produced anything else really. We just moved into record at Albert Studio the Goodnight Fiona album, and so that was a bit of a charge ahead. And then the final burst of writing before the Aloha final concerts where everybody made a contribution, apart from Bill, which is kind of odd now because he was very productive at the end of his life.
The titles of some of the songs on here. Now, I'm guessing that you were probably inspired by Frank Zappa to a certain degree. He had the Weasels Rip My Flesh album at the time, with lovely songs like Prelude to the Afternoon of a Sexually Aroused Gas Mask. So on this record, we've got What the World Needs is a New Pair of Socks and Neo Existentialists, or I can't even pronounce the word, Greens.
Existential.
Existential Greens, Confessions of a Psychopathic Cowpoke. These are some pretty creative titles in there, Mike.
And they mostly they live up to it in the lyrics, and we did get a due response from the commercial radio stations banning 5 of the tracks from the Strange Fantastic Dream album. And not surprisingly, and I'd still do when I'm doing solo gigs, I still do Confessions of a Psychopathic Cowpoke. But I think more people are inclined to get it as being slightly satirical.
Mm. Yeah. Well, it's quite the historic recording to have out there. And this is the first time these have been released, the live adventures of Ariel
Yes.
from the Aztec Records label. Thank you, Gil Matthews.
Yes.
And as you just mentioned, there is another one coming.
There could be another 2, but Terminal Bars was the live recording of the band. Regrettably, I think what ended up on the double album represented probably less than half of the actual concert. But unfortunately, regrettably, all that stuff, the rest of the tapes have been lost. So that's probably all we'll hear.
And is there any more Spectrum to go?
Doubtful. Yeah, I'd say almost 100%. There's nothing really out there anymore.
Because it's all out here, which is good.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, good to catch up, Mike. Again, if people want to go and check it out, the live adventures of Ariel from 1976 and 1997, 2 CD as well. And that's out there now. Good to have you here at Noise 11.
Thanks, Paul. Great to chat about that. And I did mention at the top that the band's really tight. It was actually, that's a really astonishing thing for me, is you've got 3 guitars going hammer and tong, and it all sounds crisp and clean, and the arrangements are sometimes amazingly complex, but it all sounds great. So highly recommended listening.